Tech, privacy, big tech, data mining, you name it, we're going to be talking about it. Joining us this morning is Buffy Wicks, State Assemblywoman from the East Bay. Now, last year, California voters were under the impression that we passed a privacy law regarding data and big tech. Now I understand it's being reworked a little bit. What's really going on?
Well, we did pass a bill last year. It was, I think, a foundational bill around protecting consumer data. When we went into the legislative cycle this year, both sides wanted fixes to the bill.
Fixes
Yes.
to the bill. So we had consumers that wanted fixes to the
Yep.
bill, and the industry wanted fixes to the bill.
Yep.
All this is being done rather quietly. What are the fixes that you and the consumers wanted?
Well, I wanted to strengthen the consumer protections and continue to protect more privacy. So there's a couple components to that. One is this option of opting in for your data to be collected versus opting out. Right now, the bill is opt out.
So and it's right now you have to say, I don't want you doing it, whether it's what you wanted to say is people actively engaging and saying, yes, I want to do. That's a big difference.
Correct. That is a big difference, yeah. And I also wanted to make sure we add sharing of data, not just selling of data, because data gets shared all the time. So there's key things like that that I think are really critical that I think most consumers want as well. So I had a bill and have a bill, it's a 2-year bill, that would continue to strengthen the consumer protection.
So we passed the bill last year. Everybody stands up and cheers saying we now have consumer protections. You're coming in and you're saying, okay, we want to tighten those. Tech comes in with their ideas of tightening. What are their ideas to tighten the bill?
Well, from my perspective, I think they wanted to loosen the regulations. And if you look at, I should also say tech is not monolithic in this conversation. I think you have companies like Google and Facebook who have different needs or desires than, say, Salesforce or Apple. Facebook and Google, they collect a lot of data. We obviously know what happened with Cambridge Analytica,
right?
In terms of some of these issues.
They collect it and they sell it.
Yeah, so I think they wanted to loosen some of the regulations. So that's fundamentally the underpinning.
How do you loosen the regulations? Do you change the wordings? Do you change a comma? Where does this get done?
Well, the devil's in the details, right? And as it always is in policymaking, they wanted to narrow the scope of what personal information meant, thereby allowing more data to be collected and shared. So that's, I think, one of the key issues.
Now, this is all done in committees and places that are far away from where the press is usually be, because we're chasing the next big story, and it's all done quietly in the halls of Sacramento.
Well, there's a huge volume of bills. I think we voted on 500 or 600 bills this legislative cycle, at least in the Assembly so far. This is all done in policy committee, and it's public information, and so that stuff is aired on our public TV. But who is following it, I think, is the key question, right? And there's so many, there's housing, there's healthcare, there's education, there's privacy, there's a lot of big fights, and so the question is who's following it is, I think, the right question to ask.
Right, because Jerry Hill, state senator from the peninsula, had an anti-vaping bill and flavored cig tobacco, and that thing got amended so many times that he finally said, I'm pulling it because it's not what it started out to be.
Yeah, and you look, and I'm a freshman legislator, right? So I'm seeing all this stuff happen in real time. Often what happens with these bills is they get referred to, they start in the Rules Committee, they then get referred to 1 or 2, maybe even 3 policy committees, then they have to go through the Appropriations Committee, then to the floor of the body, and then to the other house.
Hasn't been to one of these committees meetings, they don't understand the rules necessarily, which even allows members to get up and walk out when the vote comes. So they're not even on record about doing things. They can just be absent and things can die without a vote. And often what happens is, and this happened to me, I would sit on 2 committees that are at the exact same time. So you're running back and forth, voting on legislation and having conversations in committees that are happening at the same time. So it makes it a challenge, right, as a lawmaker to make sure that, I'm in tune with what's happening. My point of view is being in the public record. And so the scheduling becomes a little bit of a logistical challenge. So it goes through multiple committees, and then it goes to the other house, goes through multiple committees, and then if there's been amendments, which usually there have been, it has to go back to your committee. So some bills go through 9 different hurdles where you have lobbyists impacting where commas go and word definitions and all of these things. Every comma and word go in definition can totally impact the bill.
Absolutely. And so being very mindful of what that means is important. But this is our democracy, and we're fleshing out these concepts as we go. And that's why some bills become what we call 2-year bills, which is what my privacy bill ultimately became, to make sure that we're thinking through every twist and turn as we go, so that from my perspective, we can continue to push forth regulations to protect consumers.
We're going to see, because sometimes those 2-year bills are a slow death. versus
Depends on the
quick
bill.
one. It is.
Although,
It is.
you know, SB 100, that was Senator De Leon's bill to get to renewable energy by 2030, 100%. That was a 2-year bill. Some bills go in one session and have to come back, like AB 392, Shirley Weber's bill that defined the police of use of force.
It got done.
It got done, so.
You're new.
I'm
Maybe
new.
by the time to leave, you'll get something done as well. And in case you haven't noticed, the presidential season is upon us. And joining us is Buffy Wicks. Now, she's a state assemblywoman now from the East Bay, but prior to going to the dark side, she actually worked on a number of professional and presidential campaigns, all the way from Howard Dean to Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton. You were sort of behind the scenes on the nuts and bolts. And now we have, what is it, 23, 24?
Every day a new person.
Every day a new person comes on. Some of them are breaking as far as 30%. Some of them can't get 3%. At this stage of the game, what is going on behind the scenes with these candidates?
Well, we're in the slog. I mean, that's what it is. And I think often this summertime in particular of this year in an election is a slog. And what the candidates are trying to do, they're trying to raise as much money as they possibly can so they can remain viable, especially when you look at the way the calendar is. There's 4 early states, and then there's 10 states immediately after that, 14 states to compete in. That costs a lot of money. So they're raising a lot of money. They're spending as much time as they can in those early 4 states, Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina, trying to get political endorsements, trying to get grassroots volunteers signed up.
But you know, something has changed in this election. Donald Trump. It has become more and more all about him. And we've had anti-incumbent feelings before, but this time it seems to be at a fever pitch of these. Who is that? Is it about policy, the revolution, or is it about getting rid of Trump?
I think it's a couple things. One, yes, many of us are very upset and angry at Donald Trump. I think we feel that and hear it and see it. And so we have to energize that base. But we can't just be against him. We have to be for something. So the candidate that can articulate a vision of what they're for is the one who's going to win. And I think most importantly, authenticity is going to win.
Authenticity. I hear that a lot. Social media, the launch of all of these candidates, it's almost been like an Oprah event. Let me see me, feel me, touch me. We're all here together. Does that sustain? I mean, everybody got their introduction moment on social media, the burst. How do you sustain that?
Well, I think voters want someone who's real and who's going to be authentic and say what they think, and they're not going to be kind of a cookie-cutter, talking point, poll-driven message
but at the
candidate.
same time, the people say the polls show this. You need to go this way. The base wants this. You need to address this. How do you work the candidate?
I think you have to be real. I think candidates have to be real. They have to say what they think. If
politicians aren't real by nature,
well,
are they?
I'm a newly a politician, so.
But, I mean, you work with candidates. Are there candidates that are real? Like Hillary Clinton. Everybody said, well, you never see the real her. Why did we never see the real her?
Well, you know, I had the honor of working with her, and I got to see the real her, and I saw her give the real her, right? I also think women candidates are held to a different measure than male candidates. You see that happening. And so I think at the end of the day, people want someone who's going to be authentic, who's going to say what they think. And most voters will forgive you on an issue that you may not agree on, right?
I'm going to take exception with that. Elizabeth Warren she might be trying to be authentic, but I've seen her a number of times, and she's wooden, but she has embraced the idea of policy and I have a plan. So I guess her authenticity is I'm a wonk. Is that it?
Seemingly that's what's coming out for her, right? Is who she is.
Because initially she started to say I'm not a wonk, and that didn't work. So she's going to be a wonk.
Well, and I mean the other point I'd make, I do think that's kind of who she is, but I think what we have to do strategically from the Democratic side this time around is make sure we're both engaging that kind of Obama coalition and also talking to those swing voters. We have to do both of those things. It's not an either-or strategy.
Now, while we're getting out there, let's not forget Joe Biden. Now, my question to him is, if you were consulting him, would you say get out there with the social media, get out there with answering questions, or get out of town and stay low profile for as long as you can and stay out of this round-the-clock media where you got gotcha
all of
questions?
These candidates have to show up, and they have to talk to voters, every single one of them. And I think the candidate can most effectively be there, have real conversations with voters, talk about what they think, where they think the country's going, talk about those hard truths that we're experiencing and living, lay out that vision, talk to both the base and the swing voters. And my bias is I think that Kamala Harris is the candidate to do that. You know, I think that that's going to be the candidate who wins.
Kamala Harris, let's take a quick look at that. She's a hometown. Her candidacy launched, and now all these media reports have Kamala Harris stagnated. Kamala Harris this, Kamala Harris this. What goes on in a campaign when that happens?
Well, yeah. So we are months and months and months away. The polls are going to go like this for all of these men and women, right? And what you have to do when you're in that situation as a candidate is every single day you wake up and you say, how am I getting out there today? How am I talking to voters? What are we doing every day? The campaign manager has to wake up every day and say, how are we winning? You know, and that is, you know, raising the money. It's building that grassroots army, that grassroots base of folks. That's going to be even more important, I think, in this election cycle with so many people running. Inspiring people to take action, to volunteer, to knock on those doors is going to be really, really critical. And you have to stay the course when you're a candidate running. There's going to be many, many ups and downs. You just have to stay the course, stick to your North Star, and get out there and talk to voters.
All right, Coach. Okay, take to the field, kids. All right. Anyway, that's it. It's a tough game out there. Buffy Wicks, I want to thank you for being with us this morning. Now